Hello BookTube, it's Andrea. Welcome back to Andrea's Attic. It's been a long time. Things are pretty hectic here with Jennifer. She's at that age where she's trying to grab everything. She's constantly chattering to herself or trying to get our attention. So it's very difficult for me to make videos at the moment. So she's having a little doze at the moment, so right now. So I'm actually going to try and do my wrap up for July and August because I didn't get to do it last month. I've been very busy. Also, I only read 6 books in July and 5 books in August, so it wasn't a huge read. I'm only a third of the way through my Goodreads challenge. I don't think I'm going to make it somehow. I think it was a bit over optimistic, to be honest, with a baby. But saying that, she is settling through the night, so I am getting a chance to read a bit in the evenings, just not as much as I used to. So we're just going to go through July's books first, and the first one I read was Mysterious Death of Marilyn Monroe, Conspiracies Over Enigmatic Demise of an American Blonde by Olivia Green. Now, I don't know anything about this. It's one of these self-published books from Amazon. There's some interesting pictures, nothing really special, and the quality is not great. Actually, it looks better than it does actually in the book. So I'm not going to be particularly nasty or kind. It's just going to be a sort of, I don't know anything about the author. She's used quotes that actually aren't by Marilyn, which is annoying for a start. And these books are just very, very cheaply, very quickly put together. But I don't know whether or not she's very young or English isn't her first language. But the way it's written, there are some very, very glaring grammatical errors in it. And it just doesn't make sense in... So for instance, I've just picked this line on page 11. It just says, some claim to be her suicide and some to be her murder. Well, that does not make sense. So whether or not this has been translated poorly from another language, the author's first language isn't English, or perhaps something else, I don't know, but I really wouldn't bother. I mean, it only cost a few quid. It wasn't an expensive book, but I really, really wouldn't bother if I were you. There are better books out there that you could be spending your money on. It'll go in the collection, but it probably will never get read again. This book my dad gave me, I think he probably picked it up from a charity shop. It's got dust all over it. And that is The Innocent by David Baldacci. I like David Baldacci, an assassin with a mission, but whose side is he on? So basically in this book, our protagonist is a government assassin who is told to go and kill this person who turns out to be a woman who has 2 children in the house with her, and she actually works for the American government. There's some big conspiracy. It's a setup for him on one of his previous kills. There's a young girl involved who he gets to know and help because her parents are killed. It's all part of this big elaborate thing. As you can see, it's a very thick book. I thought, where is this going? But as with all David Baldacci, very good, very enjoyable. I loved it. Yeah, definitely pick that one up if you see it. I'm not going to give ratings anymore. I think it's a waste of time because what I think, it might have been 4.2, it might have been 3.9. There's no input in the Goodreads rating system. I can't even remember what I gave it. I might start doing that again for September, unless it's a reread. If it's a reread, unless I actually change the star rating, which I probably won't, I'm not going to bother. Now the next book I read is a biography. It's Judy and I, My Life with Judy Garland by Sid Luft. So Sid Luft was the 3rd of Judy Garland's 5 husbands. He was with her throughout the 50s and early part of the 60s. She had 2 children with Joey and Lorna. Lorna being the eldest of the 2. We all know Lorna Luft. And basically it's his memoir. So there's a lot about him in it and where he came from and his background as a pilot. I'm so tired. I know that a lot of people were waiting a long time for this to come out because he left it unfinished when he died, and then another author has picked it up and finished it. And you can tell where that happens. There is a bit of a jolt that it's not as in depth after his death, where he left off. It's still very, very interesting. Sid Luft, whether you like or loathe him, was a very big part of Judy Garland's life and career, and he did help her as much as he could, as much as she would let him, and he did give her 2 wonderful children, and for that you've got to you've got to say, well, there was something there. The only people who knew the truth 100% were Judy and Sid, and unfortunately neither of them are here to tell us 100% what happened. But it was a really good book. There's some nice pictures in it. It's definitely worth picking up, absolutely, no question. I can't believe I had that lying around for over a year without reading it. Then I read Lee Child, Killing Floor. This is the first of the, what the heck is his name? Jack Reacher novels. Interesting. He basically is going to a small little town in Georgia because his brother mentioned that a famous blues singer died there, or something like that. A dead guitar player. So he goes down there. He's just not long out of the army. He's got his pension, he's got his money, and he's just not on the grid anymore. He's completely off the grid. But Margrave has a homicide and Jack Reacher is accused of the murder. I'm just going to pop you on pause for a second because little Lynn's decided to wake up and start crying. Bless her. So it won't be a sec. Alright, I'm back. Oh, I just had to feed Peanut because she was hungry. She's now playing on the floor. You might hear her laughing and joking. So yeah, Killing Floor. Yes, so Margrave has had its first homicide in 30 years and Reacher's the only stranger in town, so they want to blame him. However, they find out it can't possibly be him because he has a watertight alibi, but he has to find out because the murdered person is a little bit closer to home than he thought. Now, I like these books by Lee Child. I haven't read them all, but it was nice to read the very first one. Really enjoyed that. So definitely pick that up if you like that sort of thing. I still can't deal with Tom Cruise playing Jack Reacher. Just doesn't work for me because Tom Cruise is short and dark and Jack Reacher is supposed to be like 6 foot and blonde. So, sorry, just doesn't work for me. Next was the Stephen King Book of the Month, thanks to Binge Reader. I'm still doing it. I am going through it. So July's book was Night Shift, which is a collection of short stories, which is good because you can read one, leave it, you right? Read another, leave it, and carry on and just do that. So this contains the story Children of the Corn, hence the cover, among others. Have a look. Yeah, Jerusalem's Lot, which is Salem, is a story of Salem's Lot, a short one. Yeah, Trucks, that was a bit freaky. Obviously Children of the Corn. Really good. Stephen King at his best. Some of his short stories are always freaky, and some of them I think, oh really? And then they'll come back a few days later and you're like, oh yeah, ooh, that's a bit weird. Do like his short stories. That one was definitely a good read. I'm looking forward to putting that on my Stephen King shelf. You can read them later when you're old enough, yes. Book from the TBR jar that I pulled out in July was Rudolph Valentino, The Untold Story, which is by Wayne Vincent Hatford. This is the second book he's written. I still haven't finished the first one. It's very hard going because it's supposed to be Rudolph Valentino talking from beyond the grave, so don't know what I think about that. It's interesting, but I don't know. And I do believe, I guess, in life after death, but I just don't know if... I'm very yellow. I'm not actually sure why. It's on the right setting, but never mind. And then the last book I read in July was Terry Goodkind's Death's Mistress, book 1 in the Nikki Chronicles. And this follows on from his Sword of Truth series. So in the Sword of Truth series, it tells the story of Richard and Kaelin and their struggle to the end of the war with Emperor Zhejiang and the Imperial Order. Then there's, I think, 3 more books after that, which I haven't read. I need to, and they'll explain why when we get onto August books. But so this tells the story of Nikki, who was a Sister of the Dark. We first met the Sisters of the Dark in the second book, Stone of Tears, and Nathan Rahl, who was one of his ancestors who was kept as a prisoner in the Palace of the Prophets for thousands of years. Richard sends Nikki and Nathan on a journey to spread the word that the world is now free from tyranny and people are allowed to live as they wish as long as they live under the rules of the Daharan Empire, which is basically peace and prosperity for everybody with no exceptions. So no racism, no sexism, everybody's equal. Well, to an extent, obviously, unless you're a Ral or an Amnol. And so she goes off. Nathan has lost his powers. Prophecy has been eradicated from the world based on something that Richard did in one of the books. But he has also lost his gift. He can no longer practice magic and he doesn't know why. And in this book, they meet a witch who says that he must find himself and must find his power again. And the sorceress, Nikki, shall save the world. It's an old prophecy, so it still exists. Nikki saves the world about 3 or 4 times in this book. So as they go to Collider, which is a place that they need to go to spread the word, and that's where Nathan needs to go to find himself. So as you can see, she's making funny noises. Hey Jennifer! You okay? You okay? Yes, you are. Yeah. So I really enjoyed this book. Book 2 is out. Book 3 is due out in December, I think. So I need to pick the second one up quite quickly. So I'll be getting that one soon because I'm really looking forward to the second book. Although some people say it's not as good as the first one. Right, so August. I only read 5 books, but 4 of them were chunkers. They were really chunky. And 4 of them were by the same person. And again, it's Terry Goodkind, because I finally got round to reading The First Confessor. Now this was originally on my TBR job, but I wanted to read it so badly that I just took it out and read it. I redid the TBR job, everything else back into this one out. So this tells the story of the first confessor. So in the Sword of Truth series, we learn about the confessors and the mother confessor through Caelan Amnel. We learned that the first confessor's name was Magdesiris, and her wizard's name was Merit. And this basically tells the story of how the confessor's power and the Sword of Truth were both created. It's a very good book. At first I was like questioning things, and then I just, well, let's just see how it goes. And it's a very clever story about how Merit creates the Sword of Truth, and from the Sword of Truth he creates the confessor magic that we learn about in Wizard's First Rule with Caelan. So we meet the legendary Magdesiris, who was the first confessor, the first mother confessor, why her dress is white, why she designed it that way, and so on. Basically what has happened is her husband, the first wizard, has killed himself. She is now no longer a woman of standing because she had nothing before. They make her hair cut, they cut her hair, because in the Midlands, in these books, a woman's hair has a significance. And then she needs to find out why her husband killed himself and what's going on. He's had a prophecy of the confessors and the confessor palace, and what will happen, and the war that's ongoing at this time, and why they're forging a Sword of Truth. The Sword of Truth is actually the key to the Boxes of Auden, which will be explained in, I think, the last book, Confessor, of the Richard and Caelan series, Sword of Truth. But I really enjoyed this. I gobbled it up. Absolutely fantastic. I'm just going to have a sip of tea. I am. Oh. Then, because I was in a Terry Goodkind kind of mood, I thought, well, I've read that one. I'm going to read the next book chronologically in the series, which is Debt of Bones. Very short story, which tells the story of Zedekah Suzerander and how he created the barriers between the 3 lands, Dahara and the Midlands, and the Midlands and the other one, and Westland, and how everything happened and how he hurt Panisral and killed Panisral and damaged Darkenral in Dahara. So it is a nice little sequel. It came out around the middle of the Sword of Truth series. And then of course had to read the very first book, The Wizard's First Rule. I don't have a dust jacketed copy, I only have that. But there we go. So obviously this tells the story of Richard Cypher. His father is murdered. He does not know why. He goes in search of answers. And while searching, he meets a lone woman travelling at speed who's been followed by 4 men. So he decides to help her, and so between them the 4 men are killed. He doesn't understand how it happened and they're still alive, but it does. And they go off together to find the first wizard, the great wizard. He finds out her name is Kaelin Amnell, but she doesn't tell him that she's a confessor or what a confessor is. He has no idea. He lives in Westland. Westland is a land without magic at all. She is there to find the first wizard because they need him to name a seeker. So that turns out to be Zed, which is Richard's grandfather, but he doesn't know that at the time. And then Richard discovers Zed is the first wizard, and so he is named Seeker, and they have to leave Westland to travel to the Midlands to defeat Darken Ral, who wants to rule the world, and if he can't rule it, he'll destroy it. Basically, that's the plot. As you can see, the tripod is being kicked by a baby, so I do apologise. After that, it was time for August Stephen King book, and this is different seasons. This is 4 novellas. I think that's the right way up, yeah. 4 novellas. This includes Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. So 4 novellas in one book. Obviously that is the most famous. Then there's, stop kicking that please. Apt Pupil, about a schoolboy who recognises a man who is a war criminal, and basically they blackmail each other into not telling the truth, and so on. The Body is the story of 4 young boys who venture into the woods to go and have a look at a dead body. Basically, somebody from their school is killed by a train, and they want to go, and it's their adventure going to find the body and how it affected them. And then The Breathing Method is this tale of a doctor. He goes to a club where they tell stories every Christmas Eve, or Thursday before Christmas, and the doctor tells the story of a woman who's going to give birth no matter what, and it's quite a horrifying story. It's quite sad as well, but it was a great one for our Stephen King book of the month, so I really enjoyed that. Next month is Pet Sematary, and that's a short one. I'm looking forward to it. And the final book I read in August is Back to Terry Goodkind, and this is The Law of Nines. This is the first book he wrote after Confessor, which was originally meant to be the last book in the Sword of Truth, but it wasn't, because then he wrote another 3, which I haven't read. And for me, this one generates more questions than answers. It creates more questions that I have, and I don't know if they're answered in the next 3 books that I haven't read, so I need to pick them up to find out. So this tells the story of basically the people who were sent from Richard's world, Westland, Midlands, Dahara, into our world. So we meet Alex. He is the last of the Ral line in our world in New York. I think New York or Boston, somewhere like that. Somewhere in America. It's always America. Obviously, because Terry Goodkind's American. So that would make sense. So Alexander is the last of the Rals. And on his 27th birthday, he inherits a big piece of land in Maine. Around this time, he meets a woman named Jax, who is mysterious and disappears and comes and goes, and she tells him the mirrors are watching him. This concerns him because his mother is confined to a mental institution, because she often says they're watching from behind the mirrors. And what it turns out is this is people from Richard Ral's world watching him, because he's the last of Ral's. They want to bridge the gap. Basically the age-old war between magic and non-magic in that world is ongoing again. It never ends, and there's this person who wants to end magic once and for all, but he also wants to rule the world without magic. So his idea is to find the path between the two worlds, much like there was a path and the boundaries. There's a path between their world and our world, so he can take back our technology, our guns and our bombs, so he can control everybody in that world. Jax comes across, and she's wearing a black satin dress with a square cut neck. It's clearly a confessor dress for anybody who knows the story, which raises a question, which I will get to those questions in a moment. She's that comes across to help him stop this person. And they have to travel around. They don't know who's good and who's bad. They end up confined in the same mental institution as his mother for a while, and then they escape. And they go to this piece of land, because in that piece of land there is a rock named Castle Rock, and it's the exact shape of the People's Palace in Dahara, and it's here that the path between the two worlds lies. Now, This book is set some thousand or many years in the future from Richard Rowell. It's our present, it's Richard Rowell's future. In their world, Dahara and so on, the Rowell line has completely died out. He is the last of the Rowells in either world, basically. But nobody can remember who the last Rowell was. It's that far in the past and what happened. There's myths and there's legends, but nobody really knows a lot about it. The question they have was, Jax is clearly a confessor, yet in Sword of Truth series, Kaelin is the last confessor. She's married to Richard. They cannot have any children because if they do, the chances are it would be a male confessor who, if you need to read the books, cannot control the power. They take what they want. Their power is so strong that it's immediately replenished, and that the power really works better. And in a woman, it basically, they say that it takes a woman's unique compassion to make the power work properly. So if the Rowell lines died out, they cannot have had a child. Yet this woman is a confessor. Now a confessor can only be born of a confessor. Her last name is also Amnul. Now in the books, Kaelin is the last confessor and she's also the last Amnul. So what happened? Did Kaelin take another husband, perhaps after Richard died, and bore children with him that would bear the Amnul name, therefore recreating the confessor line? Or did Richard somehow recreate the confessor magic using the Sword of Truth, which is how it was originally conjured up, and all confessors from then on took the Amnul name? I don't know. I don't know whether that's answered in the last 3 books. I need to read them really to find out. However, I did really enjoy the book. I thought it was really good. A nice take on the worlds being parallel. Yeah, but those questions, that obviously she's wearing a confessor dress. There's also, I wanted her to explain what a confessor was. There's this bit where they go into this occult shop, and there's this figure of a woman in white that they call a mystery woman, and it's clearly a mother confessor, the way that the dress is, and it's described that it's clearly Kaelin. But Jax doesn't want to talk about it. She just wants to leave. She doesn't explain what that is, and for me that left a thread hanging that I really wanted explained. He's not continued the series, so it's just one standalone in that world. So but to say that I did really enjoy it. So those are all the books that I read in July and August. I do have my TBR jar here. I'm just going to make a cup of tea down. As you can see, it's all multicoloured. It's all nice new things. I'm going to give it a shake. I've gone out of focus. Hello. That's it. And I'm going to pick one out and we're going to see. Now, I don't look, because I've actually written it in Sharpie, so it's quite bright. So I'm digging down quite deep to see what I get. And I'm hoping it's not going to be a huge one, because I'm still reading Can't Buy Me Love, because it's so huge. And it's just, it's all right. But, and I love the Beatles, don't get me wrong. So I have picked up, it's got a long title. Oh, Under the Rainbow, The Real Liza Minnelli by George Meyer. So that's not a very big book. I don't know if you can see that. There it is. Obviously this book came out in the 90s, so it's actually out of date now. It doesn't come to recent times, but still I'm going to enjoy reading that, because obviously I'm a big fan of her mother. So yeah, so that's the book. I'm going to go and find that now. Hopefully I will read more in September. You never know. So those are the books I read in July and August. Let me know what you think. Have you read any of the books? What do you think of them? Any tips for reading with a young baby? Because it's very, very difficult, other than audiobooks, because I do listen to them, but I tend to fall asleep when I'm listening to an audiobook, unless I'm doing something else like colouring, and I can't do that because, again, I don't get that much time to colour at the moment because she takes up so much time. She's actually holding the leg of the tripod, so let me know any tips for reading with a young baby other than audiobooks, because I do tend to fall asleep when I'm listening to an audiobook. Doesn't stop me from listening to them though. I'm going to go because she looks like she wants to play. I'm going to put these books away, and I'll see you all fairly soon, hopefully with a new book video. No book hauls, just can't justify buying them. I've got so many to read and nowhere to put them. So no book hauls at the moment. And I'll see you all soon. So bye BookTube, I hope you're having a great time. See you soon.